It's good travel. Oh, hold on. That's in the parking lot. It'll be like this. Hey, this is Davin with Hagerty on our Redline rebuild updates. Today I'm back on Snowball's Ford race car. I've been cutting and hacking and doing all those things as you've seen. This is going to be one of those days where I am just kind of figuring it out, because there's been multiple times where I set up a plan, say I won't do something one way, and lo and behold, that's the only stinking way I can do it. So then that's what happens. Go in with one plan and be ready to change that plan. That's the best plan at the end of the day. What I have accomplished so far is I've been working on the steering. So I'm trying to get my steering wheel in position. Sitting in the seat, it felt like the steering wheel's over here and the seat was in a different spot. So this is the old mount that you see here. So this is the old one, this is the new one. And it was located over on this side of the car, and it was short. And the reason I extended it, I had to move it anyway, so at the same time I extended it out to give it a little more support, so I didn't have a bunch of 3/4 tubing hanging out this far and kind of wallering around. So this stiffened all that up really well. I have it in pretty good position right now, mocked up wise. My seat's just sitting in here, but it's against this back rail. I'm using the back rail of the roll cage to be my 0 point, if you will, so I'm going to square everything off of that, even though I'll technically be looking through the pillar a little bit. But that's okay, because you don't look at the left side, you look at the right side going left. Really, you do. I did add in a quickener because the manual steering box is going to be a real ape to try to drag around the corners. I believe the 2-to-1 steering box is going to really, I should say a 1-to-2 steering box is going to really help out. And which means I get 1 turn here and 2 turns going out. So that's mocked in. Also changing it from a rod directly from the steering box directly to the steering wheel is a bad idea. Meaning if something happens and you run into something in the front end, when this crush starts to come back, well, that one piece of steel turns into a spear and keeps kind of going the same direction you're sitting. So what you do is you put in a couple U-joints similar to this. So you got a U-joint, and there's one here, and there'll be one up underneath the dash. And when I'm done, this shaft will sit about like this. So I'm gonna have to make some changes to the frame rail, slide this box in a little, so this will be a little straighter this way. And that'll tidy that up. And I also got to keep in mind that I have an engine that has to go in there. So let me get this. So we're going to take and set this up in here with the motor mounts. I am not just strong smelling. So got my motor mounts kind of cleaned up a little bit. Going to put those in. Take my plastic block. Oh, I let the cat out of the bag. Yeah, that's not real. Set that up in there. That gives me some spatial awareness relative to the steering shaft too, because every time you add something in, you have to keep in mind that other stuff has to package around it. So if you avoid putting it in the wrong spot to begin with, that'll certainly help down the road. So you get to think ahead about 14 steps. All right, my plan out here is to use Heim joint down here at the box, and you see I had to remove this plate that was here. the hole that was in there was actually way up in here. That angle gets a little ugly when I get in the inside now that I've changed position of the steering box. So taking that plate off and this hole that was already in here, I'll probably be in about that area, and ultimately going to use, okay. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. By the time this steering box comes over, I'm going to be about like that, and I need to be down. So the hole that was way up here was not going to work. I'll have this flange bearing up top going through the firewall, and I think that'll pretty well do it. Well, you see we got a few sparks flying here and there with a plasma torch, and what I'm trying to accomplish is getting a better mounting spot for the steering box. So basically where I was at was with the steering box in here, where it was at, the rods were going to bind up, so that wouldn't be so hot. Now granted, I could have just rotated everything up, but then I start getting into weird angles that way, so I moved it rearward in car and put these bars parallel, and then brought this output shaft on the, technically I guess it's the input shaft of the steering box a little bit lower, not at quite such a angle up. So how that's going to look is this. All frames are boxed relative to where the steering gearbox mounts, meaning there's at least some sort of tube or something within that thin sheet metal of a frame, so when you run the bolts through and you tighten things down, you don't crush the frame. So there's always, call it a hard stop or boxing function to it. So this is what I have set up, just to have some of these. I'll have 3 tubes in there, and as you can see, get this mounted up, hopefully. All right, now I can take and rotate this basically where I need it, get these bars parallel, or at least not binding up. I think parallel is going to be tight because of where this is going to end up, so I'm going to probably be about like that, which will work. Then as I go through the stroke, I don't have to worry about these things stopping from turning. That tends to get a little hairy. So process after this, I do want to have this kind of as straight as I can as far as geometry is concerned. And the next couple holes, the next 2 that I put through for my tubing, I won't make oversized, so I don't have to worry about them wiggling around. Right now I did this purposely, so it's a little more literally wiggle room, so I can put it in position. Then this boxing extension that was in here, I'll take and drive that back right up against this one and then re-weld it. I had to move it because basically I couldn't get drilled through the edge of it on the inside of here. So just to avoid that, pull it out of the way, slip it back in when I'm done, re-weld it, and it'll be pretty.
So more sparks and stuff?
Yep. So I'm going to see how many more sparks I actually have to get. The steering box is proud going into the frame, so I either need to heat and beat this out or into it, which actually is probably a decent way of doing it. But regardless, I need to horse handle the drill and get a couple holes cut back through this and put some sleeves in there. So back to work. Back to cutting. Okay, so I had my steering box temped up. You can see I got a nice little, I'll call it a patch. At the end of the day, I started here, this kind of worked, but really I needed a good pivot point, and this made out for a better pivot point. So I got this pretty tight as far as going cross and all that. Everything's good that way. Took my spacer, it's right to the box, pushed everything off against the frame rail, so I got a little bit of clearance there. I clearanced the frame rail as well for the body of the box, and then basically stuck these in around it. Now I tried to go about drilling holes, have them exactly perfect, and quite frankly it didn't work out. So I made the ones on the frame a couple sizes bigger than my 3/4 tubing, and then on this side, the reason I had to aug out that hole the where it was is when I made my access panel on the bottom to get to this frame rail that just got shoved up in there that was in the way of the hole, I still couldn't quite get to what I needed. So it is what it is. The beauty of a race car, you can cut, weld, cut, weld, cut, weld, and then weld and cut. So at this point, I'm gonna tack in my 3 tubes and my plate. That will give me a pretty sturdy spot on this side. That way they're not moving. I'll probably try to get a couple tacks on the other side as well. Because as we know, when we weld something, it tends to wander as it cools. So I'll keep it nice and tight to the steering box. That way when I take this in and out, I don't have to worry so much about destroying my threads on my steering box or having some weird bind when I go to assemble it. And then after that, it's a matter of cutting this to size, setting that bearing in place, and then attaching it to the top end, and then my steering is done. Done.
Simple as that.
It's as simple as that. It's always as simple as that. Hey, what are you watching me for? Get in the shop, get your work done. It's a nice day. See ya.